With the first pick in the 2019 NBA Draft, the New Orleans Pelicans select Zion Williamson from Duke.
Iguodala up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, a spectacular move by Michael Jordan. Right back out to Allen. His three-pointer. Bang! Mamba out.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Shot Clock Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Nathan Shaw. It's been a long day for me. It's been a long day for the guest host of today's episode, Cameron Nia. Cameron, just go ahead and introduce yourself, man.
Yeah, so I'm Cameron Nia. I'm a sports analyst, similar to Nathan. I also have my own podcast. I like to interview athletes, mostly college athletes and then some professional athletes as well. I do interviews, and then I also talk basketball, football, baseball, pretty much everything on my own podcast. I have an Instagram, Cameron J Nia, which is pretty much just my name. That's pretty much all you need to know about me. I'm a sports analyst, and I do interviews as well.
I'll put a link to his Instagram in the link at the end of this episode. But anyways, Cameron, I've watched a lot happen this week. And what's it been, 2 days of free agency so far?
It's been crazy. 2 days of free agency. We also had the draft in there, the trade period. It's just been a crazy day week in basketball.
I know. Well, you look at it and you're like, all right, well, if we were in June right now, we'd have June. And then we wait a month, and free agency starts in July 1st. But now it's like it's back-to-back. You finished free draft night one day, which my guy Tyrell Terry went and drafted to the Mavericks, which I have a funny story about that real quick. So Mikey, he came on the podcast a while back, and Ty is his good friend, and I've been able to play Xbox with Ty every now and then here and there. I send them a message. I said, congrats on going to Dallas, bro. Have fun. And I found out through Adrian Wojnarowski on Twitter like 3 minutes before they found out, because they turned off all their phones. They ignored it all. And then my friend Mikey said he got the message from me saying that, and I was like, he FaceTimed me the other day. He's like, yeah, bro. I was like tripping out because I was like, what do you mean I'm going to Dallas? And he said 3 minutes later he gets a call, you're going to Dallas, and he's like getting all excited. Mark Cuban calls. Luka Doncic follows him on Instagram, gives him a DM. So just a whole crazy sequence. And it's pretty cool to me to be like, I broke the news kind of type thing, but I don't think I broke the news. I think it was just a funny situation that happened.
Yeah, that's actually hilarious. It's the first time I've heard this story, obviously. As a Thunder fan, we were picking at 30 through 34, I believe it was at the time. And I was praying that Terry would have made it to that point. He's a heck of a player for sure. So that's a funny story.
The Thunder, I mean, there's nothing to be disappointed about as a Thunder fan. You've got 17, 18 first-round picks, probably like 20 second-round picks. You've got every pick in the NBA now.
I know. I can't even count how many picks. Presti did a really good job this offseason, though. He went and got a bunch of different like veteran players who had like big $20 million contracts, but then he found a way to dump them off to other teams, like some to Dallas, some other places. And he just keeps stockpiling those picks. It'll be interesting to see what he can do with all of them.
Well, I feel like the key for those picks is you've got to be a lottery team, and you got to hope. Like you could tell the Dennis Schroeder trade was out of hope that the Lakers beat the Clippers, and in the regular season and postseason, where they get a good pick out of that for the next couple of years, because like their picks go until like what 2026, 27.
The main part of the picks is, I think, until 2026, I believe, yeah.
So, yeah, like if they beat the Clippers, Kawhi and Paul George leaving free agency 2021, 2022, whatever it is, because they're on a 2-year and +1 player option. So if they leave, then that sends the Thunder into way heck of better spot where they get those picks. So the Thunder might not be a good team for another 4 years, 5 years, which is going to be hard to see as in your standpoint as a Thunder fan.
Yeah. They also the Rockets. They have a lot of Rockets picks, so I was kind of happy to see the whole Harden rumors, whatever. I believe they own the Rockets first round pick this upcoming year, top 5 protected. So if they fall in that mid range tier, 6, 7, 8 in the draft, that'll be really good for them. But I like the way that the Thunder are trending. All these picks, obviously, you can't go wrong. When you have 18 picks, you can maybe trade some of those for a star, or you can go with a natural route and draft them. I like some of what they did in the draft with Theo Maldion out of some team in France. I really like that pick. And then obviously Poku, the guy they took at 17 or 18, I believe. I think he has a lot of potential. Who knows what he will be. But I think the way that they went with the European route in the draft, they only took European players, more of a boom or bust style player. But I think that's an interesting route that they took this year for sure.
What I love about what the Thunder's doing is it's like the Thunder are slowly getting better over the next couple of years, and you just watch these teams like the Clippers, the Knicks, the Rockets fall apart. Like the Knicks, they're not going anywhere in the next couple of years. We're being honest. But then you watch the Knicks or the Rockets, and the Rockets are like, all right, let's trade Russell Westbrook, let's trade James Harden. Which, heck, we don't know where they're going. But that's what I want to talk about next. Is Houston has a huge problem, and we've got to solve it. What trade are you looking at for James Harden?
For James Harden, I mean, I think you have to send him to Brooklyn, or else you're not going to get really any value, at least in my opinion. The first trade I would look at with Brooklyn would be Jarrett Allen, Karis LeVert, and Spencer Dinwiddie. Those are 3 guys that really won't be experiencing as much playing time with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving back. So I think if they can get those 3 players for James Harden, I think that they could do really well with that. And then obviously if you can get a first round pick as well, I think that would be great for them. But even those 3 players, Jarrett Allen's obviously a phenomenal rebounder. LeVert has a lot of potential, and Spencer Dinwiddie's kind of like a Middleton type player in my opinion, like as far as the role he plays for your team. So I think those 3 players, if you can rebuild, and then you can obviously trade Westbrook somewhere else for some picks, I think that's one way you can go really well. I think another option is trading him to the 76ers. The 76ers have expressed that they're not really interested in trading Ben Simmons. But if you can trade Harden for Simmons and a first, I think you get a first-round pick there, which is crucial because you already lost a bunch of picks. And then obviously with Ben Simmons, he's a young player. He has a lot of potential as well. He's already pretty much living up to an all-star caliber player. So you're getting all-star caliber player out of the 76ers. So I think that's another route Houston could go. But right now, it seems like they're being pretty patient, trying to explore all their options, which I think is good. But those are the 2 options that I would look at if I was the Houston general manager.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see Harden on a team like the Nets or the 76ers. But what I'm really interested in is to see where Westbrook goes, because he's not a great fit for most teams. You'd love to have him as a team. Anyone would love to have him. He former MVP, led the NBA in triple-double and triple-doubles twice, I believe. You'd love to have him. This year was kind of his regression year, though. And it makes you think, is this regression going to continue? And I could see this trend kind of happening in a sense where every year he's going to keep progressing from here on. And that's where I'd like to see him on a team like the Wizards. You trade him to the Wizards, you get John Wall back, you just do a straight-up swap. Both athletic players, both very versatile. John Wall, unsure about his future, but that sends him to the Rockets, where the Rockets are ready to tank. Yes, they're going to have that big cap space, but if we're being honest, they're not going to pick up much free agents in the next coming years anyways, because no one's appealed to, we got here, I'll propose you this. We got John Wall, Karis LeVert, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Jarrett Allen. Now, Jarrett Allen sounds nice to me as a good center to play with. But if you're playing with 3 guards like John Wall, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Karis LeVert, that's not much. A lot of the key in the NBA is guard. It's a guard-oriented league, guard and small forward. And I just don't see many players wanting to come to a team like that, especially when they're tanking. So I think it's a lot of building up in the draft for this Houston Rockets team. But yeah, like I said, Russell Westbrook for a straight-up swap of John Wall is amazing trade to me. I think it's a good fit for both teams. I think it's a good idea I think it's a good plug that the that the Wizards need to pull. They need to be like, all right, we need to win now. We're in win now mode. We've got Bradley Beal, who just averaged 30 points a game. So what are we going to do with him? And I think that's where it comes in is Russell Westbrook. Gosh, Russell Westbrook is such a great fit alongside a guy like John Wall. And it's not a team many expect him to go to. People expect him to go to Charlotte a week ago. People expect him to even go to the Knicks. But I see it being this Wizards team. I think it's a great fit. I think it bumps up Bradley Beal's production. I think it bumps up Westbrook's production, and it allows him to be that primary ball handler while you have Bradley Beal playing off ball.
So my only problem with the Wizards is obviously we saw John Wall. He requested a trade because the team, at least I believe he said, the team decided to build around Bradley Beal. They said Bradley Beal is kind of their guy. And Westbrook kind of needs to be that guy on a team. He needs to be what Bradley Beal would be doing, which is why I would like a fit with the Hornets or the Knicks better, because if he goes to a team like the Wizards, and like we saw in Houston, he was not the number one guy there, and he really struggled not being that number one guy. I think he's much more fit to be the number one guy, be the primary ball handler, be the offense running through, and obviously they can do that in Washington, but I'm not really sure that they want to do that. I'm not really sure that they want to go with Westbrook because it seems like they're pretty committed to Bradley Beal. Obviously, they also have Rui Hachimura. I think they drafted Deni Avdija. So they have a bunch of pieces there. And then you obviously just signed, I forget who they signed to a big deal already right now. So you already have a lot of pieces there. And if you bring in Westbrook, I'm worried if I'm the Wizards that you're going to be ruining something there, and you could potentially lose Rui Hachimura or Bradley Beal in the future, maybe request a trade or something, which is why if he goes to a team like the Hornets or the Knicks, in my opinion, especially the Knicks, I think Knicks fans would be excited to have Russell Westbrook, even though if he's going to keep regressing or kind of stay at the same level, he'll be that number one guy. I think he'll be able to bring them at least to the 6th, 7th, or 8th seed. And Knicks fans haven't obviously experienced that in a while. So if I'm the Knicks, I would be looking to get him because you want to keep your fan base energized, especially in a big market like that. You're able to bring other players in if you have a star like Russell Westbrook, if he's playing well, if he goes back to at least somewhat close to his triple-double, like godly form, essentially. I think that's really good for your team. And then obviously for Charlotte, you're a small market team. If you can bring in a guy and you do well, make like a 6th seed or something, make your franchise kind of relevant again with Devontae Graham and all your other players, I think that could be really good for your team. I don't love it for Devontae Graham's development because obviously Russell Westbrook, he's very needy with the ball, at least in my opinion. So I think that could hurt Devontae Graham, but it could make your franchise relevant again. And I think that's something important for a small market team like that.
I love that you bring up Devontae Graham because the Hornets just drafted LaMelo Ball, and we know out of just simple facts that LaMelo is going to be running point guard at 6'7", I believe, and he's going to be more of a point forward. But that makes you think this lineup for the Hornets is a pretty solid lineup now that they have Gordon Hayward. But the question is what do you do with Devontae Graham? Do you have him as a 6-man? Do you have him play the shooting guard? What do you do with Devontae Graham?
So for me, I didn't really like the LaMelo Ball pick at all. Really, you need big man on that squad, and I feel like Onyeka Okongwu could be a day one contributor there out of USC. But now they're obviously at this point they've already taken LaMelo Ball, and I think LaMelo Ball with his 6'8" size, I feel like if you can force him into maybe a shooting guard type role, even though he's more of a primary ball handler, or maybe even bring him off the bench and kind of spark something off the bench, because I like Devontae Graham's potential a lot. I really like him a lot. I feel like he could become a Trae Young type player if he can just continue to improve his shooting. Obviously, we saw he's a very dynamic player. He makes some big plays every now and then. I think I watched him in person at a Lakers game this year. So he's a good player in my opinion. I think if he could develop into a really good player, and I don't really love that LaMelo Ball pick, but if I'm the Hornets right now, I would probably start Devontae Graham, actually bring LaMelo Ball off the bench. I know LeVar probably would definitely not be happy with that, but I think I would bring LaMelo Ball off the bench and then have a similar starting five. I like the Gordon Hayward pickup a lot of money, $30 million a year, but I think Gordon Hayward, if we look at him before his injury, people would be thinking $30 million is a solid deal for him. So I think if he can return to somewhat of his pre-injury form, I think the Hornets could be relevant even without a player like Westbrook. Because if Devontae Graham can keep developing, he could be a star. And then if you bring LaMelo as your sixth man, he can facilitate the bench, improve the bench players, because obviously we know he's great at spreading the ball around. And if he can shoot the ball well as well, I think bringing him off the bench would be the best option. But obviously, we'll have to see what they do there.
I real quick want to apologize for my voice. My voice has been going away the past few days, but you can probably tell whenever I talk, it's like slowly fading out. But I mean, the draft was filled with amazing talent, and it goes all the way to the 30th pick to the 60th pick even. And what I love is you and I were talking the other day about it seems like almost all the teams in the West are competing for that A spot or competing for the chip. Like you even got the Timberwolves, who were a team that would tank years past, pick up Anthony Edwards, pick up great free agents, and here they are now. They're looking like a potential A seed.
Yeah, for sure. It's a really interesting year for the West. I mean, pretty much every team except the Thunder and probably the Rockets, if they get rid of whoever they get rid of. But even the return that they get for the players that they get rid of will probably keep them in contention for the eighth seed. So I think it's really interesting. Teams like the Suns, the Hawks, teams that you wouldn't really think of as playoff contenders, obviously they're now contending. The Hawks, they have Capella. They're really loaded all around the board. Capella, Trae Young, a bunch of players there. So you obviously you have DeAndre Hunter and just a bunch of young studs on that team with a few older pieces as well. You went and got Gallinari. I think they have a super stacked lineup, and they could be an interesting team. So I think everyone in the every team really in the West, and then a lot of teams in the East. I think almost everyone's really competing for those 8th, 7th, 6th seeds. And I really only think that maybe like the Lakers, maybe not even the Clippers, honestly, because we saw they don't really have that good chemistry. But they'll probably make it as well with the Mavericks. I think aside from really those 3 teams and the Nuggets, maybe 4, really every other seed is pretty much a toss-up. And I think a lot of teams like the Timberwolves, like you said, they have Karl-Anthony Towns, D'Angelo Russell. So I think it's going to be really interesting. It's a super unique year. The Thunder really picked a good year to tank, especially in the stacked draft with Cade Cunningham, Brandon Boston, a bunch of other players. So I think they picked a great year to draft. Presti did a really good job there. So it's a really interesting year. And for teams that are tanking, you're getting a win. For teams like the Suns, who could be Western Conference Finals contenders in other years. This year with the Lakers, the Warriors, even though Klay Thompson's injured, I still think they can be really good. So I kind of feel bad for a team like the Suns, who are really in a win now type mode, because you want to keep Booker happy. So I feel bad for them a bit, but teams who are tanking are really getting a bonus this year, because the teams that are tanking are obviously going to be a lot worse than a lot of the other teams in the NBA who are trying to contend.
Yeah, like you said, the Lakers. Oh my gosh, they got so much better. And that was a team I didn't think – I believed as a Lakers fan that we were just going to kind of – that last year was our peak for the next couple of years, and we were going to kind of slow down. And eventually Anthony Davis is going to be the only guy left out of the LeBron and AD duo. And then they pick up Montrezl Harrell, Dennis Schroeder. First it was Dennis Schroeder, and I was like, oh, wow, that's a really good pickup. And then I'm like, oh, wow, for Danny Green and a first-round pick, heck, sign me up. I can do that any day. He missed the Game 5 game-winning shot, clinked it off the front of the rim. I'm like, all right, that's cool with me. Shot 0 for 7 multiple games. And then 2 days later, I refresh my Twitter feed. I see, OMG, Montrezl Harrell's a Laker. And I'm like, this is the same guy that won 6th Man of the Year, right? I'm like, they must be saying this must be a different Montrezl Harrell or something. And I refresh my feed and I see Montrezl Harrell post on Instagram, yes, sir, joining the Lake Star or something like that. And I'm like, oh, wow. I'm like, this is really happening. This is real life. And this is all that the Lakers get better in the case that they still have AD, hopefully. Which right now he's holding out. From what I've heard on Twitter is that he's staying, but they're working through the contract. But it's just crazy to me to see how many great pickups, like Wesley Matthews even. This Lakers team got better from an extent of Avery Bradley losing Rondo to losing almost lost KCP to losing Danny Green. You upgrade, you got Dennis Schroeder, Montrezl Harrell. Boogie Cousins possibly is a thing. You lose Dwight Howard, who completely lied to us. And then you lose and then you gain you get back Anthony Davis, you gain Wesley Matthews, and it's just all great pickups. And I want to know, what's your thoughts on all that?
So yeah, I agree. I think last year when Kawhi was kind of playing with the Lakers a bit, he really ruined the opportunity for the Lakers to get any free agents or trade for anyone like a Dennis Schroeder, because they were gearing up to go pay Kawhi. So I think Rob Pelinka did a fantastic job this offseason. When I first saw the Montrezl Harrell news, I was shocked. I'm like, is this a typo? Do they mean returning or going to the Clippers, returning to the Clippers? I was shocked there. Now you have 2 6 man of the years. Schroeder, in my opinion, should have been the 6th man of the year. The biased Thunder fan there. But Bo, you have 2 6 man of the years. And I really never expected a guy like Montrezl Harrell to even take a pay cut to go play for the Lakers. So I think that was a huge win for the Lakers there. And then I did talk about Wesley Matthews in my podcast. He's pretty much a cheaper Danny Green, in my opinion. He shoots the ball over 38% from 3 last year, which is something Danny Green just couldn't do consistently at all last year. So you're getting Wesley Matthews at $3.56 million a year, I believe. So I think that's perfect. You get rid of Danny Green, you ship him on his way. Obviously, get Dennis Schroeder in return, who's probably a better player. I mean, he almost won 6th man of the year last year. Probably he got second in the voting for that. He averaged almost 20 points with the Thunder. He can provide a spark off the bench, which the Lakers really struggled and didn't have last year. When LeBron and AD were off the floor, they just really struggled. So I think Dennis Schroeder is a perfect option. And with Wesley Matthews, you're basically replacing Danny Green, but you're getting like a 10 to 15-ish $1 million pay deficit there. So you're gaining 10 to 15 million in cap, which you went and obviously signed Montrezl Harrell. KCP looks like he's coming back on that $13 million a year deal.
I think it's $50 million a year because it was $40 million. Yeah, $40 million through 3 years. So big contract. I don't know how I feel about the contract, but I do love him as a player, so I'm okay with it right now.
Yeah. I don't feel like he's really worth that much. 15 million, 15 million. So he's a good player. He really showed up in the finals. I don't think he's worth that much, especially for 3 years. Maybe if you signed him a 1-year deal, it would have made a little bit more sense. But that's the price you have to give to get good players. So I'm okay with that if I'm a Lakers fan. So obviously the Lakers made a ton of good pickups. And when you compare KCP's contract to other players like a Jeremy Grant obviously went and got paid $20 million a year. And obviously he's a better player than Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, but there's a $5 to $7 million pay gap there. And I think they're $5 to $7 million different as far as skill. So they're pretty even. They're pretty even as far as their contributions. Obviously, Jeremy Grant's a more electric, better defender. But I think if you kind of compare the contracts there, I don't know how the Lakers got Montrez at $9.5 million a year compared to KCP at that much. But if you compare the contracts, it does make sense in some areas.
Yeah, it's so insane to me that Montrezl Harrell is a Laker. Like, never in a million years would I thought that would have been the end of the free agency for 2020. So it's insane to me, and I think it's very likely Lakers are 2021 champions and repeat, unless if the Nets get Harden. I could see the Nets putting up a good fight.
Yeah, I'm not too big on the Nets. I don't really love the fit. Even if you go get Harden, I just don't love Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, James Harden. They all play well in the ISO. We know that. but 3 ISO players on the floor at the same time, you probably have to bring one off the bench. And I don't think any of the 3 would be happy coming off the bench. So I just don't know how they can coexist. Obviously, I thought the Warriors would be the biggest threat in the Lakers' path next year, maybe the Clippers as well. But I thought the Warriors would be the biggest threat in their path because the Warriors, they had Stephen Curry, a healthy Klay Thompson, but now they don't have a healthy Klay Thompson. So that was a big loss for you. So I thought the Warriors would be the –
I was never scared of the Warriors in the case. I always thought, yeah, the Warriors are a great shooting team. But I don't think that the Warriors were going to make it deep. I think they were going to put up a good 6-game fight against the Lakers in the second round, go about 5th seed versus 1st seed, put up a good fight, and then show off kind of like the Miami Heat team did. But I don't think they're going to be very good because I don't know if I trust Achilles and an injured Klay Thompson, a very sustainable to injury Steph Curry, and then a rookie center. I don't know if I trust that too much as a lineup.
Yeah, I like their playoff experience. Obviously, LeBron has playoff experience, but their whole squad as a whole, I like the experience there. Obviously, they've shown that they can win. That was kind of my thinking there. But, yeah, really right now, I mean, if you look at the teams that can really compete with the Lakers, I don't see a single team in the West. No one has Montrezl Harrell and Dennis Schroeder coming off their bench in the West. And then if you look at the East, I think really the Bucks, I mean, we'll see what Giannis can do in the playoffs. He's kind of a choke king in the playoffs right now. And then I don't really see obviously the Heat, they didn't get much better. They got a little bit better, but I don't really see them repeating that success. Boston's interesting, but you just lost Gordon Hayward. So you're kind of there. I think Jason Tatum's a phenomenal player. I don't think they're really competing. And then the 76ers, I really like what they did a lot, but you got Tyrese Maxey, obviously, other pieces, Danny Green, Dwight Howard. So I think they're honestly like the next biggest contender. But like if you look at their stars, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid never worked together. So I don't really see a team in the Lakers' path right now. We'll see what happens.
I think this is Boston's year. Personally, I think now that Gordon Hayward's out, that gives a lot more minutes to those younger guys off the bench. That gives a lot more minutes to Jason Tatum. It allows more spacing to be created. Yes, Gordon Hayward spaced the floor, but also yet again you can't have too many shooters. So that's where they come in and get a finisher. Like they could have picked up Derek Jones Jr., which would have been a great pickup for that team. A team I feel like we're ignoring a little bit is the Trailblazers. They picked up Robert Covington to pick up in a trade and picked up Rodney Hood again. The Trailblazers are looking lethal, and they've got healthy centers again, so hopefully they can put up a fight in the West this year. But it's going to be an interesting year. It went from a duo-orientated league to now it's slowly going back to super teams being created, and it's just insane to me.
Yeah, I think it's really crazy. Another team, 2 teams that we're really not looking at is the Nuggets. I don't really like the Nuggets' chances against the Lakers. They just don't have the firepower there, like it's simple as that. And then the Jazz, I really like Donovan Mitchell a lot. I have him up there with like Jason Tatum, obviously not the exact same tier, but a little bit under him. But I think he's really good. I like the guy they drafted at 27. Even though he's not, he's a very traditional center, Udoka Azubuike. So I think he could be a good player, but he's obviously very traditional. So, but I don't see a team in the West that really can compete to the same level as the Lakers. No team has the same firepower. 2 Sixth Man of the Years, and then 2 MVPs pretty much. Like Anthony Davis is getting to that point where he could be an MVP next year. And then LeBron's always in the MVP conversation. 2 MVPs, 2 Sixth Man of the Year, and a bunch of solid players around. I think it's hard to compete with that team.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting year as well for a team like the Pelicans, who just picked up Steven Adams, Eric Bledsoe. Who else did they get from the Bucks? Do you remember?
George Hill was involved with the trade. He got rerouted to Oklahoma City, so they didn't. I don't think there was anyone else. And then they gave up a first and 2 seconds, I believe, to go to Oklahoma City.
So yeah, that's an interesting year for the Pelicans. Is You got Eric Bledsoe, Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, hopefully, Zion Williamson, Steven Adams. There's your starting five right there. If Lonzo or Eric Bledsoe is playing the shooting guard or the one. Incredible lineup and interesting things to come out of there. I could see that being a 7th, 6th seed, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I think they definitely have a lot of power. I really like Brandon Ingram. I'm not really sure. Is he restricted free agent or just a complete free agent?
He should be restricted free agent. From the times I've played 2K multiple times in my room, rebuilding teams, he should be a restricted free agent.
Okay, so yeah, hopefully they get him back. I was shocked that I saw him on the free agent market. I'm like, no one was really talking about him, so I thought it had to be some sort of restriction. But yeah, so they'll probably get him back, of course. My only problem is I don't love the Steven Adams trade. Like, you only gave up like a first and 2 seconds, which won't really affect you this year. But he absolutely kills spacing. He's kind of a stagnant big man in there. He doesn't really fit with the modern NBA. I was just talking about how I loved a guy out of the draft. He doesn't fit with the modern NBA. Now I'm killing someone for not fitting with the modern NBA. But I think with Zion, he can at least space the floor. He can shoot the ball. So I don't really love Steven Adams' fit with that team, which kind of makes me look away from them. But obviously Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, Lonzo Ball, when healthy, them and Suns, I put them in the same boat. They're two teams that have a lot of potential that could do really good. I just don't feel like they're on the same level as teams like the Lakers, who have a lot of veteran talent compared to a team, especially the Pelicans. Obviously, the Suns have Chris Paul, but the Pelicans, really, aside from maybe Eric Bledsoe and like Steven Adams, who's 29, 30 years old, maybe less, I'm not sure. But aside from those two players, like the core of your team is young compared to a Lakers. Anthony Davis is obviously younger. You have LeBron James, a veteran who still competes at the same tier, if not better, than almost every single other player in the NBA.
All right. Well, Cameron, great podcast. First podcast of hopefully a couple that we've done together, and hopefully we can work together even in the future in our own careers. But Cameron, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for discussing the whole free agency, all the craziness going on with it. So thank you for that.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me on.
No problem. If you want to check out the Shot Clock Podcast, check it out on Instagram at the Shot Clock Pod. Check it out on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all streaming platforms, even Anchor FM, which is our sponsor. Thank you so much for listening. This has been Cameron and I. We appreciate you for coming on and listening. We'll see you guys next week.